What if hidden deep within the DNA of the Jewish people lies a secret so powerful, it could upend everything we thought we knew? One that science is only just beginning to uncover, revealing a story far more intricate than anyone imagined. And guess what? Only a few people ever discuss this openly. Curious? Stick with me until the end, because we're about to dive into one of the most fascinating genetic mysteries in human history. Scientists have recently confirmed something historians and anthropologists have suspected for years. No matter where Jewish communities have lived, whether in Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, or even India, they all share a strong genetic connection. But how is that possible when they've been scattered across the world for centuries? The answer lies in something called the founder effect. Think of it this way. Imagine a small group of people breaking away from a larger community and living in isolation for generations. Because they only marry within their own group, their unique genetic traits become more concentrated over time. This is exactly what happened with Jewish populations again and again throughout history. From ancient Babylon to medieval Europe and North Africa, Jewish communities often lived in tight-knit groups, rarely intermarrying with outsiders. This led to a genetic bottleneck, where certain traits, both advantageous and risky, became more common over generations. But here's where things get even more fascinating. Among Ashkenazi Jews, who make up the majority of Jewish populations in Europe and America, scientists found something extraordinary. Genetic analysis reveals that nearly half of all Ashkenazi Jews alive today descended from just 4 Jewish women who lived around 1,000 years ago. These women's genes were passed down through generations, shaping the genetic makeup of millions. Fast forward to today, and scientists have uncovered a remarkable truth. Nearly half of all Ashkenazi Jews alive today can trace their genetic lineage back to these 4 women. 4 women whose names have been lost to time, but whose genetic imprint remains. Scientists made this discovery by studying mitochondrial DNA, genetic material passed down only from mothers to their children. Unlike other DNA, which mixes from both parents, mitochondrial DNA stays nearly unchanged through generations. This means a person living today could share the exact same mitochondrial DNA as an ancestor from 1,000 years ago. But that's only part of the mystery, because hidden in this DNA is something even more surprising. One of the most controversial aspects of Jewish genetics is the link between inherited traits and intelligence. Multiple studies have found that Ashkenazi Jews, in particular, have a significantly higher average IQ than other populations. They are disproportionately represented in fields like science, mathematics, and literature. But why? One theory suggests that historical pressures, such as being restricted to certain professions like banking, medicine, and scholarly work, may have contributed to the selection of intellectual traits over centuries. In other words, intelligence became a survival advantage. But there's a darker side to this genetic inheritance. Alongside these intellectual traits, Ashkenazi Jews also have higher rates of certain genetic diseases, such as Tay-Sachs disease and BRCA-related cancers. These are not random illnesses. They are a direct result of the founder effect, where certain genes, both good and bad, were amplified over generations. Could this be nature's trade-off? A genetic price for intelligence? Scientists are still trying to unravel this mystery. The truth is, people have tried to twist science to fit their own prejudices, and Jewish genetics have been one of the biggest targets of this. Back in the 20th century, the Nazis used fake scientific arguments to claim that Jewish people were biologically different in a negative way. They pushed the idea that Jews were genetically inferior or a threat to society, which they used as an excuse to justify discrimination, forced sterilization, and ultimately, the Holocaust. It wasn't real science, it was propaganda, designed to dehumanize an entire group of people. Even today, some people try to misuse Jewish genetics in a different way. Instead of calling Jewish DNA inferior, certain conspiracy theorists claim that Jews have some kind of genetic advantage that gives them control over global finance, media, or politics. They point to the fact that a lot of successful people in banking, academia, and science happen to be Jewish and say, "See, it must be genetic." But the truth is, success isn't just about DNA, it's about history, culture, education, and opportunity. Jewish communities have emphasized learning, resilience, and adaptability for centuries, which plays a huge role in their achievements. Genetics might contribute in small ways, just like they do for any population, but these broad generalizations are mostly based on misinformation and stereotypes, not real science. Science today tells us that while different groups may have some unique genetic traits, no single group is biologically destined for power or success. It's way more complicated than that. Perhaps the most shocking revelation in Jewish DNA research is the discovery that Jewish genetics confirms something long debated: an unbroken link to the ancient past. Despite centuries of dispersion and persecution, the core genetic identity of Jewish people remains remarkably intact. A study of the Y chromosome, passed down from father to son, found that Jewish men from different backgrounds, Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Mizrahi, share common Middle Eastern ancestors. This means that despite thousands of years of migration, their DNA still carries the signature of the ancient Israelites. But here's where it gets eerie. Some studies suggest that the Kohanim, the priestly lineage in Judaism, can trace their ancestry back over 3,000 years to a single common ancestor. If true, this means that modern Jewish priests are the direct genetic descendants of the priests who served in the ancient Temple of Jerusalem. This discovery has massive implications. It suggests that despite exile, war, and centuries of separation, Jewish DNA carries an unbroken historical thread, woven through time itself. And one of the most controversial theories about Jewish DNA is the idea that some Jewish groups, particularly the Ashkenazi Jews, might not be genetically connected to the ancient Israelites at all. Instead, some historians argue that they descend from the Khazars, a Turkic people from Central Asia, who converted to Judaism in the early Middle Ages. Is there any truth to this? Genetic research has largely debunked this theory, showing that Ashkenazi Jews do have strong Middle Eastern genetic roots. However, their DNA also carries traces of European ancestry, suggesting intermarriage at some point in history. Still, the Khazar theory persists in certain circles, raising questions about Jewish identity, ancestry, and historical narratives. While Ashkenazi Jews often dominate discussions on Jewish genetics, the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jewish communities hold their own genetic mysteries. These groups, originating from Spain, North Africa, and the Middle East, have fascinating DNA markers that connect them to the ancient Levant. Sephardic Jews, for example, carry genes that reveal their historical migration patterns, from Spain to Portugal, North Africa, and even the Ottoman Empire. Mizrahi Jews, on the other hand, have DNA that aligns closely with ancient Mesopotamian and Persian populations, showing deep roots in the cradle of civilization. Recent genetic studies have even found remnants of Jewish ancestry among populations that were forced to convert to Christianity or Islam during the Spanish Inquisition. These discoveries show that Jewish DNA, even when hidden, leaves an unbreakable imprint through history. Also, Jewish populations, particularly Ashkenazi Jews, have been found to have genetic adaptations that may offer resistance to certain diseases. Some examples include tuberculosis, TB. Some studies suggest that Ashkenazi Jews may have a genetic resistance to tuberculosis. This is linked to mutations in the NRAMP1 gene, which plays a role in immune response. This trait might have evolved due to the crowded living conditions of European ghettos, where TB was a major threat. Typhus. Historical records suggest that Jewish populations in medieval Europe had lower mortality rates from typhus outbreaks. Some researchers speculate that genetic factors, possibly linked to immune system adaptations, contributed to this resistance. HIV/AIDS resistance, a specific mutation known as CCR5-delta32, is found in some European populations, including Ashkenazi Jews. This mutation provides resistance to HIV by preventing the virus from entering immune cells. These adaptations are thought to have developed over centuries due to environmental pressures and historical conditions such as forced migration, persecution, and urban confinement. However, more research is needed to fully understand the extent of these genetic resistances. So, what is the darkest DNA secret that everyone hides about the Jews? It is not just one secret. It is a collection of astonishing genetic mysteries that challenge our understanding of history, intelligence, and identity. The Jewish people have carried their DNA across millennia, preserving an ancient genetic thread that links them to their biblical ancestors. They have inherited both incredible strengths and devastating genetic vulnerabilities, and they remain one of the most studied and debated genetic populations in the world.